resuscitating my newborn. He only wanted sons, she was a girl. But what he didn't expect was how I made him regret it for the rest of his life. "What are you doing?" My husband's voice roared through the delivery room. "That's my daughter." "Step back, son." Those cold words came from my father-in-law, Theodore. "The doctor said she's not strong enough. It's God's will." "You told them to stop? She's breathing. Get away from my baby." "A daughter is a disappointment anyway. You can try again for a proper heir." My father-in-law stopped doctors from resuscitating my newborn. He only wanted sons. She was a girl. "Hi, I'm Lorraine." I never imagined my father-in-law would try to let my newborn daughter die simply because she wasn't a boy. But that's exactly what Theodore Carmichael tried to do, and it revealed just how twisted his obsession with male heirs had become. I met my husband, Dennis, when I was 25. He was 27, working at his father's commercial real estate firm in Chicago, and seemed like a genuinely good man. We dated for a year before getting engaged, and during that time, I got to know his family. His father, Theodore, was wealthy, controlling, and had very specific ideas about how the world should work. His mother, Helen, was quiet, subdued, almost invisible in her own home. Dennis had two younger sisters, Caroline and Nancy. Both were accomplished. Caroline was a corporate attorney at a top firm, and Nancy was a cardiologist. But Theodore barely acknowledged their achievements. He'd built his company with the expectation that his son would take over, that the Carmichael name would continue through male descendants. The fact that he'd had 3 children and only one was male seemed to be a constant source of disappointment to him. "My daughters are successful in spite of their gender," he'd said once at a family dinner at Gibson's Steakhouse, like it was a compliment. Caroline and Nancy had exchanged looks but said nothing. I was horrified. "That's pretty sexist, Theodore," I said carefully. He'd laughed. "It's just reality, Lorraine. Men build empires. Women support them. That's how civilization works." Dennis had apologized later. "He's old-fashioned. He doesn't mean anything by it. He absolutely means it. Your sisters are amazing, and he treats them like they're worthless." "I know, but he's not going to change. It's easier to just ignore him." That should have been my warning. But I loved Dennis, and I convinced myself that his father's views wouldn't affect our relationship. I was wrong. We got married 2 years later. Beautiful wedding, expensive, because Theodore insisted on paying for everything so he could control every detail. He'd wanted us to have the reception at his country club in Winnetka. He'd wanted specific people invited. He'd wanted Dennis in a particular tuxedo style that was appropriate for a Carmichael. Helen had tried to include me in some decisions, but Theodore shut her down every time. The bride's family handles decorations. The groom's family handles substance. That's tradition. My parents were middle-class teachers from Des Plaines, sweet people who couldn't compete with Theodore's wealth or his overwhelming personality. They'd felt increasingly sidelined as the wedding planning progressed, and I felt powerless to stop it. After the wedding, things got worse. Theodore expected Dennis at the office constantly. Weekends, evenings, holidays, didn't matter. "You're being groomed to take over the company," Theodore would say. "That requires sacrifice." Dennis was exhausted all the time. Our marriage suffered. We barely saw each other in our Lincoln Park townhouse. When I complained, Dennis would say, "Just a few more years. Once I'm fully established, we'll have more freedom." Caroline and Nancy warned me. We'd started having secret sisters-in-law lunches at places like the Purple Pig, where they'd share horror stories about growing up with Theodore. "He wouldn't let us play sports growing up," Caroline said. "Said it would make us too masculine." Nancy wanted to be a veterinarian as a kid, and he told her women shouldn't work with large animals because they're not strong enough. "He literally told me on my law school graduation day that I was wasting my education," Nancy added. "Said I should find a husband and focus on that instead." "How does Helen handle it?" I asked. They both went quiet. Then Caroline said, "Mom doesn't handle it. She endures it. She's been enduring it for 35 years. Has she ever thought about leaving? Probably. But Theodore controls everything. The money, the house on Lakeshore Drive, even her Mercedes is in his name. She has a credit card, but he reviews every statement. She's trapped. I felt sick. I looked at these strong, successful women and realized they'd escaped. But Helen hadn't. And I was potentially walking into the same trap. When I got pregnant, a year into our marriage, Theodore's reaction was telling. He was overjoyed until the gender reveal at 20 weeks. We'd planned a small party, just family, at our place. Helen had made a cake with colored filling inside that would reveal the baby's sex when we cut it. Theodore had been pacing, excited, talking about the Carmichael legacy and my grandson. Dennis cut the cake, pink filling, a girl. The room went silent. Theodore's face transformed from joy to something cold and hard. Well, he said finally, that's disappointing. Dad, Dennis said quietly, don't. I'm just being honest. Every man wants a son. You can try again. This baby is wanted and loved, I said, my voice shaking, regardless of gender. Of course, Theodore said dismissively. But facts are facts. A daughter won't carry on the family name. She'll just marry into someone else's family. Helen had tears in her eyes. Caroline and Nancy looked furious, but unsurprised. This was their childhood all over again, being made to feel like disappointments simply for being female. The pregnancy was difficult. High blood pressure, gestational diabetes, constant monitoring. I needed support, but Dennis was barely home. Theodore kept him at the office more than ever, as if punishing him for having a daughter. Theodore's behavior got stranger as my due date approached. He stopped asking about the pregnancy, didn't help with the nursery, didn't show any interest in baby names. It was like he'd decided this grandchild didn't matter. Helen tried to make up for it. She'd come over and help me set up the nursery with its soft yellow walls, bring casseroles and pot roasts, talk about how excited she was for a granddaughter. Girls are special, she'd say wistfully. I always wanted Dennis to have daughters. Maybe they'd break the cycle. What cycle? She'd just shake her head sadly. I went into labor 3 weeks early. Dennis rushed me to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, and we called both sets of parents. My parents arrived within an hour. Helen came alone. Theodore's at an important meeting, she explained quietly. He'll come by later. The labor was complicated. The baby's heart rate kept dropping. After 14 hours, the doctor recommended a C-section. I was terrified, but agreed. Dennis held my hand the whole time. Our daughter was born at 7:23 p.m. She was small, just over 5 pounds, and she wasn't crying. The medical team took her immediately to assess her. I could hear them working, hear the urgency in their voices, but I couldn't see what was happening from my position on the operating table. What's going on? I asked the doctor, Dr. Stevens. Is she okay? She's having some trouble breathing. We're helping her. Just stay calm. Dennis left my side to be with the baby. I was still on the table being stitched up, trying to hear anything over the sound of my own heartbeat. That's when Theodore arrived. I heard his voice in the delivery room, loud and commanding. I came as soon as I could. Where's my grandchild? Then silence. Then Theodore's voice again, quieter. I see. Well, these things happen. I couldn't see what was happening. The surgical drape was still up. But I heard Dennis's voice suddenly rise. What are you doing? My husband's voice roared through the delivery room. That's my daughter. Step back, son. The doctor said she's not strong enough. It's God's will. You told them to stop? She's breathing. Get away from my baby. A daughter is a disappointment anyway. You can try again for a proper heir. The sound of a scuffle. Medical staff shouting. Then the most beautiful sound in the world. My baby crying. Strong, healthy crying. A nurse came to my side. Your daughter is fine. She's breathing well. We're taking her to the NICU just for observation, but she's going to be okay. What happened? What did Theodore do? The nurse's face was tight with anger. "Your husband can explain. Try to rest." But I couldn't rest. Not until Dennis came back, his face white with rage and shock. "Your father told the doctors to stop resuscitation," I said. It wasn't a question. Dennis nodded, tears streaming down his face. "She was breathing. She just needed a little help, some oxygen. It was routine, but he told them she was too weak, that we'd decided to let nature take its course, that we'd want to try again for a son. Lorraine, he tried to let our daughter die." The room spun. "He what?" The doctor was about to stop. They thought he was speaking for us. "If I hadn't been there, if I'd still been with you," his voice broke, "he would have killed her." Security removed Theodore from the hospital. The medical staff filed reports. Dr. Stevens, who'd almost listened to Theodore, was horrified when he realized Theodore wasn't speaking for us, that we desperately wanted our daughter saved. Our baby, Claire spent 3 days in the NICU under observation. She was perfect, healthy, strong, everything we'd hoped for. Theodore was banned from Northwestern Memorial. When Helen heard what happened, she had a breakdown in the waiting room. "I knew he was bad," she sobbed to me. "But this is evil." My parents were horrified. My father, usually the most mild-mannered man in the world, told Dennis that Theodore was never to be near Claire or me again. "I don't care if he's your father. He tried to murder our granddaughter." Dennis agreed. "He's dead to me." But Theodore didn't see it that way. He tried to spin the story, telling people there had been a misunderstanding, that he'd been trying to prevent unnecessary medical intervention, that everyone was overreacting. Caroline and Nancy weren't having it. They'd lived their whole lives being devalued by their father. This was the final straw. They both called him, and I heard Nancy's side of the conversation from her speakerphone. "You tried to kill your granddaughter because she's a girl." "That's not what happened." "That's exactly what happened. The hospital has it documented. The staff heard you. Dennis heard you. You told them to let her die so they could try again for a proper heir." I was in shock. I misspoke. "You're a monster, and I'm done. Caroline's done. Dennis is done. You just destroyed your entire family because you can't accept that women are human beings." Nancy hung up. Caroline called next and said essentially the same thing. Then she did something brilliant. She contacted the hospital's legal team and made sure everything was documented properly. The hospital investigation revealed that Theodore had claimed to be speaking on our behalf as parents. He told the medical team we'd discussed DNR options. He'd lied, impersonated us, interfered with medical care. While they couldn't press criminal charges without us pushing for it, they banned him permanently from all hospitals in their network and flagged his name in their system. But the real damage came from the family fallout. Helen filed for divorce within a week. 35 years of marriage ended because Theodore had finally crossed a line she couldn't ignore. "I let him treat our daughters like they were worthless," she told me, crying in our living room. "I let him control and diminish me. But I will not let him murder my granddaughter and get away with it." The divorce was brutal. Helen had been documenting things for years, keeping journals, saving emails. She'd been planning to leave, but never had the courage. Now she had the courage and the evidence. Theodore's financial control tactics, his emotional abuse, his treatment of their daughters. Caroline represented Helen in the divorce, and she was merciless, using every legal tool at her disposal. Theodore's business suffered immediately. Dennis quit, refusing to work for a man who'd tried to let his daughter die. Caroline and Nancy had both sent business to their father's firm over the years. Referrals, connections, networking, that stopped entirely. Helen's family, who Theodore had always looked down on, started telling people what had happened. In Theodore's social circles, the Winnetka Country Club, the Chicago Athletic Association, his charitable boards, the story spread. The country club where he'd been a member for 20 years quietly suggested he resign after multiple member complaints. His golf buddies stopped returning calls. Business partners started distancing themselves. Dennis started his own real estate firm, Carmichael and Associates. Several of Theodore's best employees followed him, sick of Theodore's treatment of women in the workplace. Clients followed too, preferring to work with Dennis's more progressive approach. Within 6 months, Dennis's new company was thriving while Theodore struggled to keep projects afloat. The divorce settlement was devastating for Theodore. Helen got the Lakeshore Drive penthouse, half of everything, and substantial alimony. She'd spent 35 years enabling his business success, managing his life, hosting his clients and dinners. The judge recognized that contribution. Theodore moved into a small condo in the western suburbs. His business was failing without Dennis and without the employees who'd left. His social life was destroyed. No one wanted to be associated with a man who tried to let his granddaughter die. His health declined too. The stress of losing everything, his family, his business, his reputation, took its toll. He had a heart attack 9 months after Claire's birth. Not fatal, but enough to leave him weakened and scared. He tried to reach out to Dennis once he got out of the hospital. A long letter arrived at our townhouse about how he'd made a mistake in a moment of shock, how he deeply regretted his actions, how he hoped we could rebuild our relationship. Dennis read it aloud to me one evening. There was no actual apology in it, no acknowledgement of the real harm he'd tried to cause, just excuses and justifications and vague regrets. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "Nothing. I want to do nothing. He doesn't deserve a response." We never replied. Theodore sent more letters, then emails, then tried calling. We blocked everything. He tried to send gifts for Claire's first birthday, an expensive silver rattle from Tiffany's. We returned them unopened. Helen, on the other hand, was thriving. She'd gotten a job working at a women's shelter on the north side, using her experience to help other women escape controlling relationships. She'd started therapy. She'd reconnected with old friends Theodore had isolated her from. She looked younger, happier, freer. She'd cut her hair into a stylish bob, started wearing brighter colors instead of the muted tones Theodore preferred, even bought herself a red Honda CR-V with her own money. She was an incredible grandmother to Claire, patient, loving, present, everything Theodore wasn't. Claire's first word was gamma, and Helen cried happy tears. Caroline met someone wonderful, a kind man named Andrew who treated her as an equal partner. They got engaged at a beach in Michigan, and Caroline specifically told me she'd never have been able to be in a healthy relationship if Theodore was still in her life. "I had to cut out the poison to make room for the good," she said. Nancy was excelling in her medical career. She'd been promoted to head of her cardiology department and was one of the youngest doctors to achieve that position at her hospital. She'd send me pictures of award ceremonies and conferences with captions like, "Guess I wasn't too weak after all." Dennis and I were stronger than ever. The crisis had forced us to choose, stay enmeshed with Theodore's toxicity or build our own life. We chose ourselves, chose Claire, chose each other. Sometimes I think about that moment in the delivery room, how close we came to losing Claire, how Theodore's hatred of women was so deep that he'd rather his granddaughter die than accept her existence. But then I look at Claire, now 3 years old, thriving and happy. She loves dinosaurs and building blocks. She's fierce and funny and brilliant. She asks a million questions and climbs everything she can reach. And I'm just grateful. Grateful Dennis was there in that delivery room. Grateful Dr. Stevens and the nurses realized in time what was happening. Grateful we had the strength to cut Theodore out completely. Some people are so poisoned by their beliefs that they'll destroy everything around them. Theodore destroyed his marriage, his relationship with all his children, his business, his reputation, his health, all because he couldn't accept that daughters are just as valuable as sons. Last month we heard through Helen that Theodore had another health scare. He's alone now, living in that small condo, his business barely surviving. He has a nurse who comes twice a week, but no family visits him. And now he's alone with his legacy. No family, no heirs, No one to carry on the Carmichael name he was so obsessed with protecting. Dennis's company bears the name, but Dennis is making it something different. Something inclusive. Something good. That's Theodore's punishment, living with the consequences of his hatred and watching from a distance as the family he destroyed thrives without him. Helen brings Claire to our place for dinner every Sunday. We make spaghetti and meatballs, Claire's favorite, and we laugh around the table. Caroline and Nancy join us when they can. These dinners are loud and chaotic and full of love. Sometimes I catch Helen watching Claire with this expression of wonder and sadness mixed together. I know she's thinking about her own daughters, about the childhood they had, about how different things could have been. She'll never doubt her worth, Helen said to me once, watching Claire explain something very seriously to her stuffed animals. You're making sure of that. We all are, I told her. All of us. You, Caroline, Nancy, Dennis, my parents. We're all making sure she knows she's valued. Helen smiled. That's the real legacy. Not a name or a business. This. Love, respect, equality. That's what matters. She's right. Theodore wanted to build a legacy through male heirs and family business. Instead, he's left us with something far more valuable: the knowledge of what not to be, the determination to do better, the commitment to raise our daughter knowing she's worth everything simply because she exists. If someone tried to harm your child based on their gender, would you ever give them a second chance? For us, the answer was clear. Some actions are unforgivable. Some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Theodore made his choice in that delivery room, and we made ours. And every day, when I look at Claire's bright eyes and hear her laughter filling our home, I know we made the right one.